welcome. This is Francis from the Vail Ski and Snowboard School. I'm the training manager here. Today, we're going to talk to Stan Wu, who is a high-level coach on the international level for slopestyle snowboarding. Stan started here at Vail as a ski or snowboard instructor many years ago. We met in 2008, and to be able to watch Stan's career go from teaching snowboarding to being at the Olympics and walking in the opening ceremony has been really amazing to watch. And so we're pretty lucky to have Stan to be able to come and talk to us today about some high-level performance coaching. And here he is. Hey, Stan.
Hey, how's it going?
Happy St. Paddy's Day.
Yeah. I'm not wearing any green. I got a green cup.
There you go.
Good night.
Hey, so real quick, where are you at?
I'm in Altenmarkt in Austria. So it's like 4:30 p.m. here. And we just got off hill a little while ago. We're here for training camp before the last World Cup of the season. It'll be a slopestyle World Cup. Yeah.
Nice.
So
I kind of just talked about a little bit that we met in 2008. And I know we were talking about this earlier that you thought it was a lot earlier than that. But you were a snowboard instructor here at Vail. You, just give you a little background, Stan mentored me a little bit when I first showed up. There's one season where you didn't let me cut my hair all winter.
Really?
My parents didn't let me come into the house during that summer. And you were the one who convinced me to move to Australia to coach over there, and it changed a lot of my perspective of a high level coaching and developing athletes, and that's what led me into training more effectively as well. So there's a lot of my career that has been elevated because of you. There's a lot of parts of my career that has been stunted because of you, but you've always actually helped me along the way.
Stunted? In the bar?
Well, I mean, we did backflips in the bar. Well, that's another story. But
oh yeah, you didn't flip over though. Wait, was that you?
Remember what was his name?
Caleb.
Caleb. He went too far.
Caleb went onto his head. Yeah.
But hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you became a snowboard instructor, and how you even got into snowboard? Because you're from SoCal, right? You're from
I started snowboarding in like 1994 in Big Bear in Southern California, and then I kind of graduated once I got a car and everything up to Mammoth, bigger mountains and stuff like that. And pretty much I actually I went to UCSD in San Diego for college, and during that time they had a snowboard team there that I was on. And it wasn't necessarily like a snowboard team these days with like athletic goals. It was like some people were there to snowboard a lot and try to get better. I was one of those people, and we would compete. We would go to competitions and things like that. And then there are other people there just to party, college, almost not a fraternity, but like, kind of a group of people, like-minded people that wanted to drink a lot and stuff like that. And so, I ended up snowboarding a lot during like there are some seasons I'd probably get like 60 plus days on the hill
from San Diego,
which is like a 6-hour drive each way. Well, because I would go on all the holidays, and then I would go up like when I would set up my schedule so that I would work and go to school for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I'll have a 4-day weekend every year. Every winter semester or quarter. We had quarters over there, but I just set it up like that because I don't know, during the winter, it was just like one track mind, wanted to go snowboarding. That was it. And then at the end of college, I remember we went to the US Open of surfing in Huntington Beach, like me and a friend, and Vail had a booth there. And we went there and filled out, like some kind of like job application request or something. And then they contacted us and just said, I think it was the ski school maybe that contacted us directly. I can't really remember if we requested to be instructors, or if we just said whatever job is available type of thing. I can't really, yeah, it's a long time ago. And so we pretty much, huh?
I think we should bring that back. Go to the U.S. Open and recruit people.
Yeah, you know, like it kind of it's really weird. Yeah, it kind of worked for us.
Yeah.
They contacted us and pretty much you know, it's like almost like a job fair that's super far away, and just said, hey, if you show up for this hiring week. Back then they had this like hiring week, and then they had a really long orientation training period, much longer, I think, than I've heard it is these days. You know, so it's like everything was really in depth back then to like train up, you know, an instructor and stuff like that. But yeah, basically we packed up and just drove from California out to Colorado. You know, no job, no place to stay, nothing like that. Got a room at the Roost, like I don't even think the Roost is around anymore, but it was like a motel in Vail. And it smelled like, I remember the room smelled like cigarette smoke, but we just like split a room and and ended up going to the orientation and then getting jobs, and then looking for, you know, once that was happening, one of the guys in this guy Matt Close in our hiring group, he kind of helped us out like with showing us around and like helping us, you know, find a place to live and stuff like that. So yeah, and then pretty much, I mean, I never thought about being like a career coach or a career instructor at the time, but it just, I guess over the years, it's like progressed and kind of turned into that, because that was, it was either 2001 or 2002 when I moved out to Colorado that first time.
So you went through, you became a Cert 3 snowboard instructor, and then you decided to move towards the coaching route.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why we're talking to you right now, because you're coaching at the international level, right? You're like for Australia.
Yeah.
You got back from the Olympics. Well,
I
guess back from the Olympics.
We went. I'm still on the road. I've actually been on the road for almost a year right now. Like, I haven't gone back to California. Last time I was there was to get vaccinated, and I left at the beginning of May. So
wow.
Yeah. It's a little crazy.
But so you had some success in the Olympics, right? You had 2 athletes.
Yeah, we had 2 athletes. We had the female athlete, Tess Cody. She got a bronze in slopestyle. So
and how did Matt do?
Huh?
How did Matt do?
He was not able to land his runs in slopestyle. Yeah, so he didn't. You know, like the first goal is usually you're in qualifications, you try to make finals. You know, that's usually like what you're trying to do. And Matt was unfortunately not able to put it down. Yeah.
So you were talking a little bit about how Tess went from, she was injured before qualifications. And you had to manage through that. What was your process to get Tess from, you know, a very low emotional state to be able to perform at a high level to be successful? What was that like?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess just a little bit of background. The women's qualification day and the women's finals day were 2 different days. And so on the qualification day, on the last, training was going really smoothly, and she's kind of just like progressing her run, you know, run by run. And if you know anything about slopestyle, it's like there's rails, there's jump features, and basically you're just trying to link them all up with a variety of tricks, top to bottom, and then the judges give you a score, you know, based on what the rest of the field. What the judges try to do is they try to rank the entire field, you know. So that's the importance with the judges. It's not necessarily like it's not like moguls or aerials or something like that, where there's a set score for a set skill. because mogul's course, obviously like the details are different. So basically they're the same. Aerials, same thing. Aerials is like really, really like the same jump every single time. But a slopestyle course and even a big air venue it varies, every event that you go to. So you kind of have to show up and figure it out along the way, And so on the last training run, Tess came up short rotating switchback 9 on the first jump and just landed really hard on her ankle. We didn't find out till later, but it ended up spraining like some ligaments and things like that. And it was like, she said it felt really bad, which isn't great when you're about to start qualifications where they're actually scoring the runs, and then your qualification runs. So like at the Olympics, it's a field of 30. So 30 men, 30 women, they did the 2 qualifications on 2 different days, but out of the 30, they took 12 to finals, which is actually much more forgiving than a standard World Cup, because a standard World Cup, the women have a field of 30, but they take generally 8 to finals. Sometimes it takes 6, but usually it's been 8. And then men's in a standard World Cup, the maximum field is 60, and they'll take like 12, which is I think that's a little rough.
Right.
I like, my personal opinion is I think they should try to bump that up to 16, kind of make it a little even with women with that, just because the level's so high. And it's like you make finals, you get another shot at kind of getting in the higher rankings.
So how did you get so we got a lot of feedback, but Tess like she probably was in a really tough spot, right? But
yeah,
getting her as a coach to be able to perform at a level that she can qualify, what was that like? What did you work on?
Yeah, so like a lot of, with these like national teams, and then with riders at like that World Cup level, if you have the support, which we had obviously at the Olympics, is like there's a whole team around these athletes, so it's like, yeah, of course I'm the person on snow and everything, but a big part of it is we had a medical team, we had a doctor, Don, and then we had a physio, Izzy, who'd been traveling with us. And so you have 2 medical personnel that's helping Tess like manage that injury, like, so taping it, cortisone shot if she needed it, just like doing everything they can. And so basically on the qualification day, when she did that, it was just like, okay, what can we do on hill? And so the medical team did their part as far as like taking care of it, limiting the movement, making sure nothing was, too crazy with it, made possibly, appropriate painkillers or anything like that. That's like safe to take. Like with a lot of these athletes, it's like, you got to watch what you intake, just because you get drug tested. And so you can't just take whatever you want, and that applies even to, like protein shakes and things like that. You can't just eat whatever you want with that stuff, because if it has some substance that is banned, and you test positive for it, then, that could be like a suspension or something. Or, and then for my part, I'm like very much a preparation coach, so I like to make sure that like the athletes that I work with are really prepared for the level of competition that they're competing at, and so I'm not like preparation coach versus like someone who's like very much like a hype or motivation type of coach, where you can like talk it up, on the day at the time, I'll do that if I need to, but that's not really like, I want my athletes' confidence to be based on something real and like their actual performances, like something realistic, and so that's why it's like like my reminder to Tess after she had done that is that the run that she was doing in qualifications that we had planned on doing is, like a pretty stock run for her,
Okay.
and so we're not hitting like a high threshold of her ability. Like we're kind of in the sweet spot of like, you're 100% capable of it. I was very confident that she could land it, and let's just do that first. And then once you do that, you get 2 runs, so it's like, you can either try to step it up, clean it up, like there's different approaches depending on what happens on the first run, so, but like, part of it is, as a coach, is like, basically what a lot of the field can do, because you're studying, the sport, you're studying what's happening out there. And so you have an idea of like what might make finals, what might not make finals. And it might not be true, like people might just go ham and throw something crazy that you've never seen before. And you're just like, whoa, where'd that come from? But like I said, it's like, to be the top 12 out of 30 for, is, it's something that I felt like was very doable, based on what she was doing, and based on all the training that we've done, for the past 3.5 years.
So what did it look like for 3 years? Like, how did you? So I know a little bit because we're in Australia together at this time.
Mm-hmm.
You were brought into this program to be the coach, and you knew
Yeah.
that Tess had come off an injury, like an ACL tear.
Yeah, she blew out her ACL in Pyeongchang on the slopestyle course. And so basically her journey for the past like the past 4 years, from Pyeongchang to Beijing, is like she took about a year off snow. It's not 100% necessary to do that, but she did all the rehab stuff and then spent a lot of time in the gym. And I guess for her, that injury was kind of the catalyst that got her like more motivated and more serious about all the S&C and physical preparation, that you have to do to like have a sustained career at that level, So it's like, it just makes it easier. You're stronger, you can handle more impact, you'll have more power on takeoffs, landings, different things like that. You have more endurance. And so her first year was that. And then I got brought in right a little bit kind of on the tail end of that process. And most teams have a return to snow process where it's like a graduated ramp up to like full training. And so we did like a very, very extended return to snow process, and like took things step by step. Like the first camp I worked with her at, I feel like it was probably 3 or 4 weeks where we're only riding groomers, like, and I would say like green and some sort of blue runs. That was it. Like no jump. They're like, when I was working with the med, because you're working with all these other pieces of the team. When I was talking to Peter Kane, like the head physio, it was just like, it's no jumping, there's no hitting rails, there's none of that stuff. And the thing is, she was physically capable of doing it, but it's like you're trying to get this like maximum performance out of someone. Like you don't want to, and somebody just came back, you don't want to take any risk, and you want to build from like all the way at the base. But to be honest, like that camp went really well, and we worked on a lot of things, like stance, edging, like, to be honest, a lot of things that probably instructors focus on very heavily, and I don't know, like some people might see what I do as different from that, but it's not. It's just at a different level probably, and a different focus, to get certain things out of it. So it's like, I probably, with athletes, like really, really refine. I have the time to like really refine those skills and things like that. But something that's probably different is that like I have an ASI background where I'm like a full cert instructor with that. But one thing I've realized along the way is that a lot of that stuff, it's geared for a certain audience, and it's geared for a certain like board performance or something like that, versus what these guys are doing, or like what I want to see them do on a slopestyle course or big air jump might be a little different from like a first timer on the beginner hill, right? So it's like, yeah, I've realized, like, so I've taken kind of like that training from like the ASI instructor side and tried to like make it work. And some of the things that I do is like something that you would never do as an instructor, because it's like we're looking for more speed and like more power and things like that, versus somebody who's like just learning how to turn. Like their stance and like how they initiate might be a little different because they're trying to go across the hill and we're just going straight downhill.
How do you so like Tess can understanding of some tricks, right? How do you get her to get to a point, like say you're developing one trick, right? Like for big air, for instance.
Yeah.
Right. And as you're going through your progressions of where, 9 to 10 to switched or whatever, how do you effectively build up to, hey, maybe Tess had this goal. Like I want to be able to land this trick. How do you work through that to get them to be successful in that process?
I mean, if you ask a lot of coaches, like it's if you want to be successful and consistent, like I believe it's like baby steps, and kind of like you can, not all coaches follow this, some of them will be more like, just go for it, just send it and kind of try to push in, like with some athletes that will work, but it doesn't work with everyone. But what I mean by baby steps is like not necessarily skipping steps, so it's like if you can't really turn properly or run a flat base, you should probably learn how to do all that stuff, and I'm not even saying that you have to do all that stuff and then you go to the next level, because it's like I go back and forth a lot where I will try to like step back and have them work on something like a little bit more fundamental if I see that as something that will affect what they're doing later, like farther down the line, but they're still working on, like tricks that are hard for them. But like with the baby stepping part, like there's basically 4 different like you can go front side, backside, switch front side, switch backside, right? Like if you don't talk about any weird takeoffs, just like basic spinning. And then with rails, it's like being able to do a front side 50-50, a backside 50-50, switch front side, switch backside, board slide, front board, like there's just like steps. And these are like component tricks, because if you can do all 4 360 or all 4 180s, you can do a full 360. And the thing is, it's like totally unnecessary. Like you have someone recreational or something like it, totally unnecessary to do something like go through all 4 180s, before you do a 360. Like you could probably just teach them how to do a 360, but if you want them to be that fundamentally strong, those other rotations, like the takeoffs and landings, will come back later. You know what I mean? So it's like if you can't do all 4 180s and you just learn 360s and you can't ride switch very well, how are you gonna do 540? Maybe you just skip 540s and just go straight to 720s. Maybe, like people do it, people do that kind of thing. But it's like that was the process that we took with her riding, even though like after injury, we started from the very beginning, but before that, she was already attending World Cups, so she could ride at that level already. But because we had the time and because we had that whole return to snow process that we had to go through, I was pretty much like, I had seen her riding beforehand because I'd worked at a camp with her before the injury and stuff like that. And I knew that there are certain things that we can make way stronger, and just like make her technically more proficient, to takeoffs, everything like that. And that's pretty much what we did during the graduated return to snow process. Is like after the camp, with like just making turns and riding regular, riding switch, doing just like a variety of ground skills. We did another camp a little bit later in that season where like the medical team tests like their physical abilities, pretty much like before and after those types of camps, to kind of be like, okay, this is where she's at, so it's like, her full capacity is like, they give a score at the end of it, so it's like the score will equate to this, they can do this. And so she, I think, got into the 90s with her capacity. And so it's like, okay, she can't do full training, like big jumps and things like that, but we can ride small features and also graduate from like, take your time and graduate through all those small features. And so during that time period, we did all of that kind of foundational work with the tricks, where it was like every single variation you could think of for like different rail tricks. And there are a lot of things that I found out, during that process that she'd never done before. And I was just like, okay, that's something we got to work on. That's something we got to work on. And I'm just like keeping a huge list in my head of like, these are all the holes we got to fill along the way.
So when you worked, did you come up with a game plan? Did you write this down? Did you have her come up with a training journal to work with?
Yeah, so it's weird. Okay, so like, yeah, I do have documents, like a skill tracking document and like a planning calendar and like key KPIs, like key performance indicators that are basically like goals. I do have all of that stuff, and I take notes, for myself, and then kind of go through the notes later. There wasn't a set, like the training plan usually is like all those documents kind of all together. It's not like I'm writing an essay of like, this is what I'm doing, it's kind of all that stuff together. So usually, running programs and things like that, I've had the athletes be a large part of the goal setting aspect of it, where they have documents that they're filling out of their goals, whether it's on snow goals or off snow goals, like a lot of times it's both, that way you kind of have an idea of like what's going on in their lives a little bit, that they're also focused on. But I had that plan and with Tess, but then with Tess, I found out at one of our first spring camps that was like a full training camp, like big jumps, everything like that. I found out that for her, the writing the goals down and things like that, just like what didn't really work with her mentally. Like for some people, they like to have like a list and tick things off as they go. But for this specific athlete, she felt maybe more like of a hostage to the goals. And what I mean by that is like, if you don't hit the goals, you kind of like bummed about it, and you're thinking, I'm not getting anything done. And so I had like a pretty somewhat difficult conversation and, to get all of this out, because the communication at the time wasn't super smooth, you know? And when I realized, oh, okay, that's what's the hang up is, that's what the issue is, and that spring camp was also, we had terrible weather the whole time. And it was just like a very frustrating spring camp. Once I realized that, I pretty much told her, like, look, I'm willing to work with you. You don't have to fill anything out. We just need to communicate better. Like, you need to let me know. And like, something that I always believe with, like, especially you're coaching at this level, is you should be, especially if you only have one athlete, you should be like an expert in their riding. If you're like a technical coach, like in their riding ability, like what do they need to work on? What do they need to do? What are they good at? That way, at a competition what they're capable of. And that way, during that discussion, you can be like, okay, yeah, I think that's a sweet run, or you can actually you can give them suggestions that maybe they haven't thought of, which has happened quite a bit, where it's like, hey, maybe try this, because it's like, how are you going to do that if you don't know what they like to do, what they can do? It's like, you need to be an expert on that kind of thing, and like study what they're doing, So it's like, sometimes it's like I'm riding around, but I'm not providing coaching feedback. I'm just watching. I'm just like watching what they're doing, and I just remember, which is, yeah, it's weird. It's a weird way of doing it, because it's like, sometimes I know as an instructor, sometimes it's like you're getting paid to do something and you almost feel like you need to give them feedback all the time. But sometimes that's not the case.
But you have athletes who like just are always asking for feedback, right? Like they're constantly, like, I know you're currently working with just Tess, but like you've had other athletes where it's
yeah. Like some of them, but like that's a fine balance, because it's like I've gone the route of like providing a lot of feedback in the past, and these days I'm more selective with my feedback and things like that, because it's like they need to know how to operate on their own as well, or a lot of times I'll give them, like an idea or a concept to try out for the day or for the week or something like that, and kind of follow up on it, like as we go, but not necessarily like, you need to do this, every single run. I think the lower the skill level, the younger the athlete, the more guidance you should give them, but then especially once you kind of you start getting into adults and like professional athletes and things like that, then they're going to know what to do a lot of the time, and so it's like, what can you provide that assists them with that, with their goals. Yeah.
It's like, as you're working through, because like the way I'm looking at it, what's being effective for us is that we're looking at how our trainers are working with the instructors so they can reach their goals within certification. And, for us, we have a whole season that we get to work with to be able to develop a pathway for them. But then, at cert 2 or at cert 1, there's a lot more effective feedback. But at cert 3, RMT, and above that, now you're asking for the instructor or the candidate to be able to develop their own understanding. So some people still need a lot of feedback. They always ask for feedback, but then we get frustrated because at the higher level, you should be able to give back feedback of what you're doing. How do you effectively know with an athlete like Tess, you don't give, active feedback all the time, that you and her are working and reaching the same performance cues or success? And then what do you do with another athlete that maybe they need to figure out where your standards are as you're going as a coach?
Yeah. Like if I think when I was a younger coach, I used to give a lot of guidance and a lot of feedback and be like very, very, I'm still very specific in my feedback on like what to do and things like that. But I would say it depends on what the goals are, and it depends on what they're trying to do. And then you kind of end up with this like workflow as well, where it's like you just we have like a kind of almost like a check-in process, at the beginning of a training day. It's like, okay, what are we going to do today? But the thing is too, it's like if it's a pretty like today, it's like this week we're not really like learning any new tricks or doing anything big it's just like keep the legs going, do some jumping, hit some rails, and then we're going to go to this event and probably do some runs that are within her wheelhouse. We're not like trying, it's like nothing that really matters too much. The result doesn't matter, just to go to an event and, see what she can do. Other teams will be there, maybe get a decent result that will help increase her, WSPL or FIS points for next year, basically. And so there's nothing riding on this event. And so in our training, it's kind of like we're just lapping, and I'm just trying to, I guess, this week just keep the stoke high and see if we can just have her try some different things that she doesn't normally try, that's been happening actually quite a bit and this is something where it's like a long process and a relationship where over the past 3 years, I've suggested a lot of things, try this, try that. And, it's like sometimes that's not really possible because we're getting ready for a competition. You got to do certain things, But I've just noticed this week, just doing that kind of riding, Tess has been just trying some random tricks that she doesn't usually compete and she doesn't usually do when we're training to compete, and she even did some front flips today. I've been trying to get her to do front flips for like 3 years now. Like, it's an easy trick. It's like, and she's like, and at one point she's like, and so I like, obviously there's the one part where it's like, she's listening at, and now she's ready to try some of this stuff now that there's like no pressure and, we don't really have to get anything done. But at the end of the day, this variety that I've been pushing for this whole time, if she continues with it, will make her a stronger rider, give her more options on the slopestyle course, But then I guess how it relates to the instructors, like, I totally agree with you, because I remember I've never really needed a lot of guidance with that stuff. It sort of came naturally, but you don't really know, like the language as much. Like when you're like a cert 1, cert 2, you're kind of figuring that stuff out. But I noticed when I started kind of doing like cert 2, 3, some of the freestyle stuff, like I would play around with a lot of the ideas and the skills when I was working, and that gave me a way better understanding. And that was like my own personal way of like figuring it out, on my own. And I think that helped so much, just like thinking about that stuff while I was working, because I still do that now, where if I want to get them to do something, I'm always like, you think that edging technique would work, because it's something maybe that you don't really do all the time, but maybe it'll give more power. Maybe it'll like get the board more underneath the rider, like there's certain things like that where it's like you can try it out and then see if it works, for yourself. And it doesn't mean I'm doing, 1080s, like chucking myself on big jumps. It's like I just like play around with like a certain stance or something like that, like while I'm cruising around with the riders. But yeah, I feel like I guess if you're if you're having these like candidates that are getting to that higher level that have a hard time thinking for themselves, I don't know, because like I feel like that's a big part of it, is because otherwise you're just buying into what's been given to you, and then you don't have the ability to like take it, make it your own, maybe adjust it to something else that's better for what you need it for, like making it a tool. You're just kind of like parroting what people are saying. Um, but I guess one way to kind of deal with that is you would take those candidates that are making you crazy and asking for too much feedback, and like something that I I don't know, there's a little bit of story behind it, but like there's one gymnastics coach that I worked with. Like I've been a gymnastics coach as well, and he was like my coach, and then he hired me. And I remember years later talking to him, and he had gone and worked at a gym with this Chinese couple that owned a gym in Southern California, and they had like a really high number of Olympians coming out of that gym, you know. And the one thing that surprised him that he was telling me about how they operated and ran their training sessions is that they would set up skills, you know, for the gymnast, and then they would be like, yeah, just do this many, you know, like rep it out. And he noticed that they weren't constantly giving these gymnasts feedback. They kind of if it was possible, they let the reps fix all the inconsistencies. And then only if it was like something where it's like dangerous, you know, they might get injured or something like that, then they would jump in with feedback. Hey, do this, you know what I mean? And so that's something I've always kind of like taken to mind a little bit with how you maybe work with, like, you want to think about more efficient coaching sometimes, you know, because it's like you're giving feedback all the time. That's fucking hard to do.
Right.
And the way I've explained it to athletes before, especially when I've had a bigger group, I've always like, let's say I have a group of 6 or 8, you know, 8's a lot, but like, let's say you have a group of 8, you know, I always tell them you have 1/8 of my time and you have 100% of your time. So if you only use that 1/8, you're not getting as much as you could get out of it, right? So it's like you have to pay attention, do some work, and like figure stuff out, you know. So you kind of have to put it on them a little bit to do that. Otherwise, it's like they're only getting an 1/8 portion of their trainer's time. That's it. And then 0% of their own time and energy. Like that doesn't seem like a recipe for success to me, you know. So it's like that's how I've always explained it to like athletes I've coached, you know, as far as like taking it upon themselves to figure shit out. Because it's like I think to be successful at a really high level, you do need to do that. You know, like you can't be someone who just like, okay, tell me what to do, you know. And like there are days where that happens, or I see someone's like frustrated. I'm like, you know, like then you give them a whole freaking game plan, do this. And that's the thing is like you need to be prepared for that. And there's been plenty of days where, you know, I've had to do that, you know, where it's like kind of frustrating, and it's like, you know what, step back, let's do this first, do this, and then it's like then they can kind of see clearly what to do, and then once you get the ball rolling, maybe they go in a different direction. Doesn't matter, you know. It's like then they're at least kind of like doing something active, you know, actively learning something. So yeah, so it's a difficult one with people who kind of cling like that a bit, but I don't know, I think sometimes providing less feedback, or providing feedback if they hit a certain threshold, you know what I mean? It's like I'm not going to say anything if it's just like a minor kind of mistake or inconsistency or something like that. But if it's like a major one, you know, then you might jump in, and maybe you let them know that, you know, you know, you say, okay, if just do the skill, and if you if it's like something major, we'll talk about it. And if it's not, see if you can feel it, see if you could figure it out, right? Because it's like, I mean, that's like maybe the most common thing that a lot of coaches top of the course will, how'd that feel? You know, so you could just ask these candidates, you know, like, because they do need to, it is like, you know, a physical activity, they got to figure that out, you know, how something feels. And to be honest, it's like, I think it's important for their development if they understand how something should feel, because then you can maybe give a better cue. Because a lot of times when I'm explaining, when I actually have to go through the process of explaining a trick or explaining what will help them, I explain it by how it feels or should feel, you know, instead of, because it's like you're in there, you know, and that's where they're going to be. Like that's their perspective with it versus, you know, versus some kind of a cue where it's like almost too conceptual or too much explanation, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna let you go. Like I've taken a lot of your time. This has been really, your perspective has been really, really interesting for me, and I've learned a lot from you throughout the years. And so, thank you so
Cool.
much for standing here. Real quick, you told me two things that you do consistently.
Mm-hmm.
You do a 720 on July 20th.
No, that hasn't happened in a couple of years.
And then the other part was that you have to do a backflip off the biggest jump on your birthday, so you don't.
No.
So now we're over 40. This is no longer a thing.
Yeah, none of that stuff's happened recently. Yeah. Well, I remember the first, because I used to coach up at Mount Hood, and so July 20th was like pretty soft, and you could like pretty much everyone would be trying them. So you're like, man, why not? I could still get one around. But the first year in Australia, I remember going out there and I was like, maybe I'll try.
It's rock hard.
And then it was like firm. And I was like, you know what? I'm the head coach. I probably shouldn't get injured doing this. I did some like 360s and 540s, and I was like, maybe I could still pull it around. And it's like, you know what? It's probably not worth it. Yeah. So.
What's your perspective of like injuries? Like, how do you prevent athletes' injuries or your own injuries as you're going?
I mean, my own these days, it's like very much decision making. You know, it's like, do I have something to prove to anyone? Probably not. You know, like it's like I was talking to one of the U.S. team coaches at one point, and we were like, how big do you think that jump is? It's like down there, it's like a 65-foot jump, and we're all like, we could probably still hit a jump like that. And then all of us were like, but no one would care. You do a straight air over a jump. Like, who cares, if you can do something like that at this point, and I don't know, for me personally, it's like, I used to ride stuff like that all the time. And it was like really fun, to hit jumps like that. Mm-hmm. But these days, it's just the stakes are a lot higher for work. Like if I get injured, it's like, that's time off of work. I can't be out there with the app. It's like, there's a lot more riding on dinging myself now. And it's just maybe not worth it as much. And then as far as like preventing injury, it's like, you can't, I think with what the level, like you're not going to prevent injury, but you could reduce the severity of injuries and maybe like, it's just, I think the level's too high that if you're trying to push your abilities, that most likely something's going to happen, but that's why it's super important to have like a S&C program that's based on your training and competition. And that's like periodized for that stuff, and we have S&C coaches that do a lot of that work, for the just strength and conditioning. you know, and so it's just time in the gym, you know, increasing strength, and you know, like they're doing pretty much like all their like full body, you know, and like it's programmed so that, you know, like there's a leg day, there's an upper body day, there's core on a lot of the days, you know, like stuff that will pretty much, there's, you know, like either running or cycling for cardio, you know, and so that's all put together by the S&C coach, and it's somewhat personalized for the athlete to get them to where they need to be. The S&C coaches also do physical testing, you know, for like strength and things like that, for VO2 max, for cardio, like a variety of testing so that we know where the athletes are at, and that way they can program for that. And then I also like I communicate with the S&C coaches to, you know, like especially if it has something to do with tricks. It's like when Tess was kind of coming out of that return to snow stuff, I was talking to the S&C coach quite a bit about just like how can we like increase like her rotational power for bigger rotations, you know, stuff like that, you know, or landings, you know, like landings on big jumps, you know, how, you know, that's just going to be a lot, is going to be like legs, you know, glutes, quads, like how do we kind of like work with all of that stuff to make an athlete stronger and better. And then probably the other thing that's, I guess, a big deal with just like high performance sports and stuff like that, especially these days, is like recovery. You know, it's like it's not just like going hard 100% of the time, but it's like how are you recovering? And you know, I'm sure some of that would be, you know, nutrition, how are you feeling, hydrating, things like that. And there we have nutritionists for that. And then kind of with the recovery stuff, it's like we have the S&C and like the medical team kind of working together. And it's just like, what kind of tools do you have? Like, do you need to stretch more? You know, are you limited in your motion doing things? Are you sleeping enough? You know, like that's something that I know a lot of research and things like that it's going into it these days, you know, of how important just sleeping is for performance, you know. And it's like there's a lot out there on that stuff these days,
Yeah.
that that's like very available to like know and understand, you know, like if you're going out every night, pretty hard to do what these guys are doing, you know. It's doable, but it's hard, you know.
I mean, our first few years, you told me a lot.
Yeah, I know.
Later on.
I've changed. I go to bed at like 9 p.m.
Yeah, I went to bed at 9:30 last night. It was great.
You know, yeah, but I mean, all that stuff applies to me too, because it's like I do kind of sometimes burn the candle at both ends. Like I'm trying to get things organized or something like that, and it's like, but I still need to get up and like have that energy to like keep up with these guys like every single day, you know, and try to not just be like dead all the time. Yeah, but like I don't know, there's like a lot of recovery strategies, you know, like people do things like ice baths. They have like so many tools like recovery boots that are like these big kind of active compression boots for your legs. I don't know if too much research has gone into it, but I've done like, you know, a spin bike session and put them on and then felt pretty good the next day and stuff like that. So maybe it does something, you know. And obviously like our physios kind of help out with any kind of like, you know, needling, cupping, massage, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's like there's like a whole kind of team involved with with like with like riders at this level. So I don't know. Yeah.
I know when it's selection season, I always get massages and pedicures.
Huh?
I get massages and pedicures during selection season.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. There you go. You can just write that off as recovery.
Hey,
Yeah.
Stan, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to us. Especially,
Yeah. No problem. I know it kind of like probably sidetracked a little bit off the topics a little bit, but
no, it's good.
hopefully,
I mean,
yeah.
the reality is that you started off as a snowboard instructor from Huntington Beach to, um, walking in opening ceremonies for the Olympics, and it's a big endeavor. A lot of times when we start our careers in the snow sports industry, sometimes it feels pretty tedious teaching like beginner students on a daily basis. But then as you start developing your craft and understand where you're going and moving up to different levels, there's opportunities for you throughout the industry. And so you're a
Yeah.
huge, like looking at your career has been amazing. That the fact you're international, you're in Australia, you've been on the road for a year, which is a little difficult, but
Yeah. That's not easy.
but you get to live a life where you're on snow and having a great time. You get to see a lot of different places and be in a lot of different places, and the
Yeah.
adventure itself and the development and education of what you're doing is amazing. And so,
Yeah. No,
it's just
thanks. Thanks.
it's
Yeah. I
cool.
never really, sometimes when you're in it, you don't really think about that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I appreciate you like noticing that because like even when you ask me to do this, like I know there's a lot of experience or knowledge that I can try to put out there. But when I was thinking about it, I was like, it's kind of just like boring stuff that I do all the time. But then it's like, what's boring or like what's like an everyday thing to, to some people. It's like if you don't get a glimpse into it, then it might be interesting or it might motivate somebody to do something, I
Mm.
guess. So
Did
yeah,
you
no.
get a bonus for getting a bronze medal as a
Did I
coach?
get what?
Did you get a bonus as a coach for getting a bronze medal?
So like they have made it clear to me that they want me back for another 4. And yeah, like I don't, they did say that I'm supposed to get paid more.
There you go.
But we haven't really discussed it. I don't know. That's something I haven't really discussed. Like
Yeah.
the thing is to be like really honest, it's like I don't know how ski coaches make out, but like a lot of times it's like if you're doing it for money, that will probably not work out for you, because it's like, I don't know, you've coached before. It's like you're not getting paid that much. You probably get paid more as an instructor because you get tips and stuff like that. Yeah, but it's like, I guess, passion for the sport and or like trying to make someone better, like that's got to be the reason behind it because otherwise you're not gonna because there are a lot of years where like when I switched from being an instructor to a coach, I don't know if I probably took a pay cut for sure, I think. And then like I just enjoyed being out there so much. Like I started as a weekend coach, with like younger kids and stuff like that. And I just looked forward to the weekend so much every single time and like trying to and riding with these kids that it wasn't like tedious or anything like that. But it's almost like if you get to a certain level as an instructor and you want to go the coaching route, you might kind of start at the bottom again and like, have to work your way up. I don't know. That was my experience. Kind of it depends, because there's some pro snowboarders that go from being a professional competitive snowboarder to being a coach, like make that transition. And sometimes it's a lot easier for them to start coaching at a higher level because they have that riding ability, you know, to and they have that experience, to already kind of like jump in at that level.
Right.
But that wasn't like my path at all. It's like I had like a pretty like an okay ability, but like nothing like what these guys are doing now. So that's why it's like for me, it's like more what I provide is like experience and like understanding the concepts with snowboarding to a high level. That way it's like you can still help somebody who's that good, do what they need to do. So yeah.
Well, thanks, Dan.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, good catching up with you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.